Welcome. This is Stephen Lee, and this is Life and the Living of It. This is going to be first in a series of podcasts where I remark on meeting an extraordinary person and how they affected and continue to affect my life. I met a man from Tanzania called Zakayo Malakwa, or we called him Zach. My first meeting of my friend Zach was quite an eye-opener. I was in college, and as my habit, I was in the student center, where I could almost always be found doing my homework. My pattern was to welcome people to sit down, and when they did, I just started conversations. On this day, I was with my friend Bill. We suddenly noticed that the two couples who had babies there and the constant background noise of the fussing and crying suddenly cut off. We looked up and around, and here's this stranger who was walking down the hallway in the center of the student center. And as he passed, the babies both turned their heads to him, and they were quiet. We kept watching, and as this man headed out of the student center, the babies started fussing and crying again. And Bill and I just looked at each other like, did that just happen? On another day, I saw this man go past the student center, and I stood up abruptly and went over and introduced myself to him. How do I describe Zach? Zach was a man full of just peace, the peace that came off of him in waves. There was this wonderful tenderness and a wellspring of kindness behind him. These are one of the people that you couldn't help but feel that you were in the presence of the presence in this modest, holy man. And as I got to know him over 2 years of school, he became a messenger of what it was to walk with God all the days of his life. Now, Zach was a man of few words, but I got him talking about his life and why he was in college and what his future would hold. He came to get his bachelor's in theology, and he did this because he wanted to go off to seminary and become ordained. He said that the lack of spiritual leaders in his village and the surrounding area in Tanzania was atrocious. There was one pastor or clergy person for more than 10,000 people, and he felt he needed to be one. He started talking about life in his village, and he said that the role models that were there for the children to follow were also those that rose in power by manipulating, cheating, buying their way into positions of leadership, where might made right. Now, for the poor, whom he never considered himself, though indeed I think he was poor, there was a need, a desire, a calling out for something else to provide hope in a place of climbing corrupt power. But he talked about the spirituality of the people in his village. He said the elders and the elder mothers are the ones that would spontaneously praise, that would hold worship, that would talk about God in the everyday, but that he feared for his generation and the generations to come. He would talk about the infrequent visits when he was growing up, that perhaps once every 2 weeks a priest would come by. In his words, it was too little. Not enough people were about the spirituality of things. Now, I learned before I even took it in seminary something about liberation theology through Zach's eyes. I saw the hunger his words threw up in the visions before me of the young and old, poor and impoverished. I could see his vision as a messenger of love and hope. He wanted to give them in their own language the words of life and the tools to live. And I never really saw ministry in any other way after that. Though there are those who cry out for hope in any community and within any class or race or gender or identity. The very sad part is that Zach saw the poorness of spirit most white Americans had. He knew, and his people knew, what it was to grasp the hand of Jesus, because without it they would have fallen. That for Zach and his people, faith was a necessity. It was life in the face of death. And he couldn't understand the individuality of everyone's faith. When he talked about faith, he most talked about his family, his friends, his community. That no one went off onto a mountain to pray, but that they came together in worship and praise and singing. That each person in his village tried the best to help each other out. Now let me tell you, this only came out after about 2 years of knowing Zach. Zach was quite quiet most of the time, and he didn't share his opinions with many. He always took the time to listen to others, regardless of their beliefs. His life was about 90% listening and about 10% speaking. And when he spoke to the person, in the person's shoes, in the person's life, and with love and compassion for that person. Not as a parent that would be speaking to a child, nor a pastor speaking to their congregation, but as a sibling would speak to a sibling, as another child of God loving another child of God. That is not to say that Zach never stood up for his own beliefs. Oh, he did. I was part of campus ministry back then, and we were having a meeting, and the meeting had devolved into just quarrels and arguments and even a few shouting matches. And I remember Zach just holding up his finger, and all of us just got quiet. And he said, "This is not the work of God. We do not fight with one another in the house of God." Sorry, I'm doing a terrible impression of Zach. But the words were powerful. And we all kind of looked at each other a little shamefacedly. And from then on, that meeting was quite civil and quite peaceful. Zach had a power behind the few words he spoke. An example of how the power of his words changed my life. In the summer of 1990, I had 3 possible summers planned. In one, I was going to work with the people that helped people get out of the occult in San Antonio. In another, I would go back to being a counselor at my summer camp. And in a third possibility, since Zach asked me to, I would go with him back to Tanzania for the summer to help him with his ministry. Yet I had no idea which of the 3 opportunities I would choose. I was at an impasse. And I finally asked Zach, and he says, do all 3. Doors will open, doors will close. You will find one door left. That is the one you take. And while I'm sure I rolled my eyes at this sage advice, he was right. I asked my mom about Africa, and she said absolutely no. I was only 2 years out of remission from bone cancer, and she thought that being in a foreign country and away from the large cities was a recipe for disaster. So I told Zach, and I said, I can talk her around. I just need some time. And he says, "No, you will not be going with me." And I asked why, kind of shocked at the statement. And he simply said, "Honor your father and mother. Your mother said no, so I say no." And that was it. No Africa for me. Then I get a call from the director of ministry that helped people out of the occult. And she said that a previous person who is now saved and out of the occult asked to work with her that summer. And so the position that I might have taken was now gone. So that was door number 2. And the only door left was being a camp counselor. The summer of love, one of the best summers I've ever had at camp. Now, I lost track of Zach after graduation, but I heard that he did go to seminary, and he did get ordained, and he went back to Tanzania. And even today, I can picture him in and among the villages of his area, preaching and teaching, but mostly listening and living out the gospel. And this is life, and the living of it.